You don't need experience or results to actually close high ticket deals. You really don't. And I know this because I've done it more than once, especially when I was first starting out in my video agency business. I got my first 5-figure retainer without being able to show any results of what I've done, without doing a whole bunch of like, oh, if I don't get results, you don't pay. I do not subscribe to that mindset whatsoever, because I feel like if I'm doing work, I should be paid for that work regardless. And I just did not subscribe to this mentality of, oh, let me make sure I can get someone results before I'm worthy of being paid. Now, I do feel like if you are just starting out and you have no experience whatsoever, that you should get your foot in the door by providing some sort of free work, because it's hard for people to say no to free work. And especially if you come at it, in the right way. But before we get into those tactics, I want you to start to recognize the frame of mind that you need to have. Because like, on this channel, we always tie it back to identity, right? The issue is not that you don't have results, and that's why you can't secure 5-figure contracts or 5-figure monthly contracts, or, whatever the case is, high 4-figure, 5-figure, whatever. The fact is not that you don't have the results, or you're not capable, or you don't have the skill set. That's not the case. The case is in your positioning. You don't see yourself in a certain position, and you don't see yourself as a certain way. Therefore, you aren't perceived in a particular way. Therefore, your positioning is what's actually messing you up. And I know this because I went through the same exact thing, right? Like I said, I started out as a freelancer where I was charging people based off of hourly rates, based off of day rates, based off of all these other things, just doing all these tasks and talking about hours. But hours don't convey value, right? And we know, especially if you're in the creative space, how much hour and effort goes into delivering a final product, whether that's video, photo, graphic design, whatever the case is, any creative space. You know how much hours and effort go into delivering that final product. But the client doesn't care about that. I'll be 100% honest. The client does not give a fuck about any of that at all. So you have to get to the point where you can convey your value without talking about how many hours you're putting in. Like, that is the easiest way to create a race to the bottom, seriously. So what you have to do is first start off with the proper identity. You are not a videographer. You are not a photographer. You are not a freelancer, right? You are a problem solver for a very painful problem that this business has. You are the solution to this business's very painful problem. So you have to be able to position yourself that way. And how do you start that? First, it starts with listening. I think a lot of people, when they enter into sales conversations or when they enter into conversations with a prospect, they're not really listening. And they're not really listening because they're thinking of what they need to say for the prospect to agree and to be convinced that what they're providing is of value. But the truth of the matter is, if you just listen, you'll be able to frame your offer and frame your proposal in a way that automatically cuts through all of that noise. And they will immediately in their head say, no, this is exactly what we need. Why? Because you listened to their actual problems and their actual pain points. When you go into these conversations, don't go in with the intention to sell, go in with curiosity. That's the first thing, right? So let's say you're a freelancer and you get hired by an agency, or you get hired by a particular company that's bigger, right? And you're the subcontractor. What you need to start doing is analyzing every single pain point that that company solves and how they package them, because you're just a piece in their overall solution that they're presenting to the client. That's it. The only difference between what you do and what they do is positioning. Now, there are logistics and practical steps that need to be, improved and changed in order to actually make it, realized. But from an identity perspective, if you can simplify it and recognize that the only difference between you that's being hired as a freelancer for $400, $500, $1,000 a day, and that company who just sold a $15,000 contract for 3 months, is the fact that you are only solving one very small particular issue in the overall grand scheme of things. You're actually not even really solving the issue. You are the means through which the problem is solved. So you have to move from being the means to actually being the solution itself. And when you can position yourself as the solution and not the means through which the solution happens, that is when you can literally double, triple, 4x, 5x, maybe even 10x what it is that you're charging your clients or what it is that you're getting paid when you get hired. Now, I want you to understand that there's a way to go about this. Like I said, the very first thing that you need to do is identify what problems are being solved for this company. I'll give you an example. For me, one of the bigger things that I used to do when I was working in the audiovisual industry is I would either be an audio engineer, a video engineer, whatever the case is. I was the one on the mixer board or switching the videos, switching the presentation, but I'm just a means to the actual solution of the problem, which is they need somebody to be able to ensure that their event runs smoothly on the technical side. Once I started to recognize that, I'm like, okay, who's the main point of contact, right? How does this happen? What's the process into how these things happen? And I started to realize, okay, there is an event planner or an event producer that handles all of these moving pieces, that handles all of these different wheels to ensure that the event is successful. So I'm like, okay, if I notice that the event planner is the one talking with these AV companies that's hiring me, what is their pain point? What is the thing that they have issues with that this company that hired me is solving? I got to figure that out, right? Once I started to figure that out and identify and I would even ask these event planners these questions. I would say, hey, what is your biggest struggle as an event planner when it comes to using AV? And I would start to get information and data, and I would listen, and I would write these things down, and I would try to figure out how I can now utilize this to position myself differently. So that way now I'm not even trying to position myself and my skill set to get hired by an AV company for $450, $500 a day. I'm now positioning myself to an event planner who's going to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K for an event. And then I'll figure out how to source everything and how to do everything on the back end later. Seriously. And that was how I was able to secure my first AV contract. Seriously. You know, I went from getting paid $450 a day to securing, I think it was like a $9,600 contract, all because of me switching my positioning. For a single event, by the way, keep in mind, for a single event, the same amount of things that I would have been doing for that one particular event, I could have either worked that event as an engineer and got $450 a day, or positioned myself the way I did and got close to $10,000 for a contract for a single event. And then from that point, then we completely switch the mindset in terms of the game plan, in terms of the action plan, because now we have to go and source labor, source equipment, make sure that we can execute, right, to the capacity and to the level of an actual AV company and not just an engineer. Another example, and this is when I go back to saying that you don't need results, because that was my very first AV contract. But I never had to show them results of what I did in the past, because I already knew how the game worked. Being a freelancer, I had been immersed in it. I had the hands-on experience from point A to point Z, from front to end, just by being in the industry and being observant. So I didn't need to actually have this proof that I had done these things before, because I was able to listen and I was able to position and convey myself with the authority of having already done it, because I had already immersed myself in the industry. And that's why I say it goes back to your identity and how you see yourself. If you cannot see yourself within that authority and present yourself within that authority, you won't be able to position it the right way. And you won't be able to do these things. I'll give you another example. In my video agency business, my very first retainer that I ever got, I was super new to video production, to content creation, and all I did was offer a free video. I said, hey, I want to come in, I want to shoot a free video for you. If you like it, then we can talk more about other things. I come in, I shoot the video, and me being the critic that I am, I'm looking at the video, I'm like, man, this thing is bad. I'm comparing myself to other people. But this is my very first video that I shot, like for a client, you know, for like legit client work. And granted, it was for free, but it was my foot in the door to have that conversation. So once I made that video for them, they loved it. They were ecstatic. And this is another gem that I'm gonna give you. When you're doing this and you're new and you don't have results, you don't have a portfolio, you don't have past experience as a business, but you've been doing a lot of things as a freelancer, what you have to do is find the people who are at least 2 levels below you. So you want to go and find a business who their social media is bad, right? They're putting up videos that you're like, oh, I can make a better video than that on my phone, you know? Or you want to find, you know, in my case with the AV and event planner who the company that she used last year, they completely dropped the ball. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know I can find somebody to help me do better than this. So you want to make sure that you find those people who are at least 2 levels below you. So that way, when you do deliver that work or that proposal, whatever the case is, they're going to be blown out of the water because it's such a step above what they're used to. So that's the first gem that I'm going to give you. And once you do that, you now have your foot in the door. Once you have your foot in the door and they're ecstatic about the quality of work that you've delivered, right? That's when you have a conversation. And you need to be able to position yourself to identify their problem, right? Their key pain point. And you need to see, hey, okay, what is their pain? And I need to ask them these questions. So I need to be asking questions, right? What are you guys doing in your process? What does success look like for you? How are you having trouble reaching this success, right? What is the main thing that's kind of holding you back? What are some fears that you have about not being able to hit this goal? And as you listen, don't listen from the point of, oh yeah, I'm gonna sell them this. No, listen from the point of like, what actual solutions can I come up with to solve that problem? How can I actually get them from this pain point to having this complete transformation? And then from that point, you're gonna take all that data, you're gonna work with ChatGPT, AI, whatever you wanna use, right? And you're gonna start brainstorming, you're gonna start working through these things. But listening is the first step. Once you can listen, right? Once you found that prospect that's at least 2 levels below you, you get your foot in the door, then you listen. You do nothing but listen, right? And when you listen, you'll be able to identify pain points that your skill set directly aligns with. Whether you've gotten results for anybody before in the past or not, it does not matter. I'm telling you, it does not matter. I've done this time and time again, where I put myself in position to receive job opportunities, contracts, work with people for the very first time, not having done anything, all because I'm able to listen and position myself in a way to where it is a no-brainer for that client to work with me. So once you listen and you have all of that information, you work in it with ChatGPT, AI, whatever you want to use, and you start brainstorming, start coming up with an effective solution, an effective, comprehensive solution, right? Because you got to hit their pain point. Like I said, they don't care about how you're going to do it. They don't care about the amount of hours that you're going to put in. The moment you start talking about that stuff, that's when you get back into the freelancer mode. That's when they start throwing objections. That's when they start questioning, oh, well, you know, maybe we can cut back on these hours. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that. No. What you need to do is you need to figure out the entire system of your solution, right? Which should be a set of procedures or a set of operations that you're going to carry out, whether that's, you know, a certain number of deliverables, the strategy behind it, how you're going to track it, whatever the case is. And this is going to be different depending on your industry, but you need to come up with a comprehensive solution that you can turn into a system. And not only just turn into a system that you're going to utilize once, but a system that compounds upon itself, meaning that once you put this system in place, it's able to run consistently month after month after month. This is how you close long-term contracts. I personally, when we work in our video agency, we only do a minimum of 3-month contracts. So if we're able to close a client, it's easily a 5-figure contract just off of the fact that there's a minimum of 3 months. And I was able to do that without having closed a client or got results or did anything, right? There have been a lot of gigs that I've done where I did it for the very first time, but because of the way I positioned myself, because of the way that I spoke with authority and was able to just showcase my ability, that it felt like a no-brainer to them. And you might say, oh, well, Caleb, that's being deceitful. That's being, you're lying and all this, that, and the third. And honestly, if you think that way, you're never going to actually get to where you want to get to, because you have to really assume the role before it happens, And obviously be smart. Don't, put yourself in a position to where it's like, okay, I'm completely out of my wheelhouse and then I'm going to crash and burn. But never be afraid to stretch yourself beyond what you've never done before, because you feel like you need proof or results or experience beforehand. That is the biggest thing that will hold you back, especially as a freelancer. Especially if you're a freelancer trying to become an entrepreneur, get financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom. That's the biggest thing that will hold you back. It held me back for so long until I just started saying, I don't care anymore. If I mess up, I mess up. But I know that I'm going to put my best foot forward and stretching myself beyond the things that I've done before. And I've had nothing but positive opportunities and success come from it. And I've also learned as well. And even when I did make mistakes, and even when I did fail, because of the way that I positioned myself, they never had an issue with it, right? It became more of a collaboration, more of a, okay, well, let's figure this out together. Let's figure this out together. And I think that's a really big thing, and a really important thing is when you begin to listen and you come from that frame, not only are they okay with the price that you pitch, but you also build a relationship to where they genuinely like you. So if they genuinely like you and they trust you, they're not going to just up and say, fuck you off of your first mistake. They're going to say, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's work. Let's see how we can pivot. Let's see how we can make it work. So that's the main thing that you have to do. You have to reframe that positioning in your mind. You have to go from being the means to a solution to the solution itself. You guys are acting as the function and not the actual product. You got to recognize that you're the product, you're the solution, and you're not just the means into how it gets done. That's the difference. That's the only difference. That's literally the difference between you doubling, tripling, 5xing, 10xing your income, is by you being able to sit and say, okay, I'm not a videographer. I'm not an audio engineer. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a plumber. I'm not whatever freelancer you are, whatever independent contractor you are, you're not that. You are a person who solves extremely expensive problems for companies. That's what you do. And everything else after that, you can figure out later. But you got to switch that mindset, right? Once you can switch that mindset, that's when a lot of things will start to change. So I want you to start there, and I want you to take into account the things that I said. And then once we can start to work that mind frame and we can start to actually switch that mindset, then the clarity and the inspiration and the creativity around the actual solution itself, around how to approach, around what prospects actually go after, become a lot easier, and they start to just flow, And then at that point, it's just taking repeatable actions. At that point, really the sky's the limit, because you just got to take those repeatable actions, iterate, figure it out, and then you really start to get better, and you do provide them results, and then now you actually have the confidence because you did provide the results. But you're always going to be in this loop of either doing a whole bunch of stuff for free and feeling like these higher ticket contracts are so above you and putting them on a pedestal because you don't have results, because you don't have experience, and it's probably going to take you super long. You're either going to go through that, or you're going to cut straight through it and you're going to say, hey, I can do that right now if I just know how to position myself when it comes to talking to a prospect. And I know I can help them regardless of if I've done it before or not, regardless of if I have results. If you can have that belief within yourself and you can move accordingly and move from that energy, I guarantee you, you will close your first 5-figure contract like that. You will go from charging $100 an hour, $200 an hour, to charging $10,000 for 2 months, whatever the case is, right? High ticket contracts. So With that being said, you guys know I always love to instill the proper identity and the proper mindset within you guys before we get into the practicals, before we get into the tacticals. If you guys do want some more videos on the practicals and the tacticals, let me know. I will make them for you. But if we don't fix this up here, if we don't get this in check, and if we don't frame this the right way, none of that is gonna matter, because you're gonna self-sabotage yourself and you're not going to be able to fully walk into that identity in the first place. So with all that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.